I tried to not be political. I hope that came across. I was just trying to spit facts that exist for themselves and not in the bubble of right versus left or conservative versus progressive. Like, that's not what I'm here to do. I just wanted to let the facts about Japan become more apparent. What is good, everyone? Welcome to the channel. My name is Paul. I make videos about Japanese society, life, and culture from the viewpoint of a long-term foreign resident. I've been in Japan for 19 years. This week, I'm not doing my normal walk and talk video outside because the weather is just pretty much nasty all week long. Instead, I'm going to do a reaction video to something that I watched that came across my feed, likely because I live in Japan, and it's called Ben Shapiro Destroys Jimmy Kimmel on Japan. Now, believe it or not, even though I live in Japan, I am familiar with both Ben Shapiro and Jimmy Kimmel. I know who they are, what their brands are, etc. And I'm here today to push back, not at one or the other, but I'm here to push back at things that both of them said, because they basically both left their lane when it came to their commentary. They don't have it right on Japan. Neither of them do, and I'm going to tell you why. Let's just get right into the video.
I want to begin with a clip of Jimmy Kimmel that is quite astonishing. We've had a spate of celebrities in the United States traveling to foreign countries recently and saying kind of wild things about those foreign countries. So obviously we had Tucker Carlson going to Russia and declaring that he was astonished by the Aldi's-style shopping carts and by, like escalators that carried shopping carts.
Yeah, I watched that bit and I was thinking, that's not particularly amazing. So yeah, I did actually see that bit where Tucker Carlson does that in Russia.
Jimmy Kimmel went to Japan, and you know what he noticed about Japan? The same thing that everybody notices about Japan, which is it is super clean and well ordered. Here was Jimmy Kimmel being astonished by the cleanliness of Japan.
But now, after traveling to Japan, I realized that this place, this USA we're always chanting about, is a filthy and disgusting country. We were in Japan for 7 days. Not only did I not encounter a single dirty bathroom, the bathrooms in Tokyo and Kyoto are cleaner than our operating rooms here. Everywhere you go, the bathrooms are clean, they don't smell bad, they have those toilets that wash you from the inside out. And not just in a hotel, restaurants, bars, truck stops. I went to 2 truck stops. I swear to God, the bathrooms cleaner than Jennifer Garner's teeth. The cleanest, beautiful. And it's not just the bathroom, there's no litter, people carry their own trash. There are no garbage cans in Tokyo. 30 years ago, some terrorists put some poisonous gas in some trash cans. They're like, okay, no more trash cans. Everybody clean up after yourself.
Okay, true, the sarin gas attacks happened in 1995. That was before I came to Japan. And so the Japan I came to has very, very few trash cans. And it is just completely common for Japanese people to carry their trash with them until they find a place to throw it away. If that means taking it home, or if that means finding a convenience store, and that's what you have to do. There's nowhere else to put it. The issue I have with Kimmel here is that he's a celebrity, he's probably rich, going to also be traveling in the typical tourist bubble zones of Japan. The Tokyo, Kyoto, the major tourist areas, staying in a nice hotel. Let's be honest, there are dirty parts of Japan. This is actually something I've talked about ad nauseum in terms of it just depends where you are. Like anywhere else in the world, it just depends where you are. The cities happen to be particularly clean in Japan for a very particular cultural reason, and I'm going to talk about that in a moment because I need to say that in reaction to a claim that Shapiro is going to make in a little bit here. You go out into the forests, like the beaches here can be famously just disgusting in terms of trash. So yeah, in the cities, no one's tossing trash on the streets. The why of that we'll get into in a moment, but the idea that Japan is just clean everywhere and there's no trash, there's no littering is absolutely false.
They bring their garbage to their houses, and it's like the whole country is Disneyland and we're living at Six Flags.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this sort of stupidity. Culture has come as a package deal. There's a mashup of culture and law. When it comes to Japan, Japan has always been a culture that prizes cleanliness. Not all cultures are the same. Some cultures really don't prize cleanliness. which is why when you go to certain Middle Eastern countries, they're dirty. You go down to Latin America, there are places that are not particularly clean. Not all cultures value cleanliness in the same way that the Japanese do. But
okay, it is true, and don't get me wrong from my earlier statement, this is an important point. It is true that Japan values cleanliness, taking shoes off when you enter a home, taking care of trash when you're in the city or around other people's abodes, sorting garbage very carefully and putting it out on the proper day, keeping your home in a generally presentable order. Like, my wife vacuums every single day. It's without fail. Vacuum happens every single day. The laundry happens every single day. Basically, there's that general order of cleanliness. But, again, the point is everything in its place where the cleanliness is expected. There's gaps in where Japanese care about whether something is clean or not. And I already mentioned a couple of those, and we'll get into why in a moment.
there's something else. That then gets embedded in the law. Do you know what the penalty is for littering in Japan? It's called public dumping. You can get up to 5 years in prison for littering in Japan. In the United States, a cop will not even write you a ticket for littering. So I guess we could do that in the United States. We can give you like 5 years. But I thought that Jimmy Kimmel is in favor of fewer people in prison. And law enforcement is bad, and the police, they're bad. When he says, it's just absolutely anodyne, like it's so clean in Japan. You mean you don't have...
Okay, so here we're getting into the whole debate back and forth, right versus left. What's proper about prisons and laws and bail and who should be in jail and who shouldn't be. I'm not going to weigh in on that. I'm going to stick to my lane, which is Japan, which I would kind of recommend that Kimmel and Shapiro had done themselves too. They don't know Japan, and what Shapiro is saying here is simply not true. It's true that there are these laws on the books, but Japan is also a country that has a large number of laws on the books that aren't really enforced. The police are not out there looking for people who are littering. I've never heard of anyone getting arrested for littering. One of my first memories in Japan, I'd been in Japan for less than a week. I was walking on a path close to where I was living at the time, and I watched a mother wipe the nose of her son and then casually drop the used tissue into the little stream of water that was running along the path. And this is out in the countryside, so it's this beautiful, clean little stream that she's just like, well, done with this tissue, goes there. So yeah, Japanese don't litter? False. The woman who threw away that tissue obviously didn't worry about the police coming along and arresting her. And there's no way someone tossing a can on the street is going to get 5 years in prison. They probably won't even get a second glance by the cops. And smokers I know, cigarette butts, they go everywhere. People throw cigarette butts, and there aren't a whole bunch of people sitting in Japanese prisons because they threw cigarette butts on the ground. The public dumping law that he mentions is more for people who take out large, huge amounts of garbage and like throws them into a place where it's not supposed to be disposed of. You'll see signs in the countryside, no dumping. And then you'll look behind the signs and you'll see like discarded refrigerators and microwaves and things that people have literally carried there and dumped despite the no dumping signs. Now, if you're caught doing that, like in the act, sure, you might get punished. I don't think it's going to be the 5 years in prison. You probably just get a fine. But my friend, Chris, who I've made a couple of videos with about hiking in the forest, etc., he once found a dump site, and he found receipts that indicated what company, whoever the truck driver was for this company, had stopped there and just decided to dump all of his trash from the convenience store and the supermarket and whatever he'd been carrying in the the cab of his truck. And he went to the police with this information, and they were completely uninterested. In fact, they were more interested in him, like, oh, do you live here? Do you have a resident card? Is your visa valid? Than they were bothering with someone's trash that they'd left in the forest. So the idea that Japan has got these strict litter laws and that the police are really out to get anyone who's caught littering is just absolutely not true. It's one of those laws, and there's a lot of them in Japan like this, that are on the books that aren't particularly enforced. I can give you one other quick example. That is, Bicycles are considered not to be pedestrians, yet everyone rides their bikes on the sidewalk through the pedestrian crossings, even though they're supposed to, by law, get off and walk their bike across the crossing, and they're by law not supposed to ride their bikes on the sidewalk. They can ride and do these things right in front of police, and the police are not going to do anything. The idea that Japan doesn't litter because everyone's going to be worried about getting in trouble with the law, false.
So Japan, really big on the, you break the rules, you go to jail. They have a very strong culture of the streets being clean. They have a very strong culture of, if you do these things, we will put you in jail. And we're not interested in your jabber about human rights and freedoms and liberties or any of that kind of crap. You are going to jail. You have violated the law, and now you're going to jail.
No, if you do these things, we will put you in jail is just not true. It depends what it is, like anywhere else. They're not putting you in jail for littering. It's not going to happen.
Is that what Jimmy Kimmel wants? He's shocked by the fact that there are incentive structures, and those incentive structures mean fewer people do the thing.
Okay, incentive structures. Now I'm going to bring up what I've been holding back. The reason why Japanese people don't litter has nothing to do with the law, as I mentioned. Instead, it has everything to do with the idea of meiwaku, or causing a nuisance. If you litter and there's no one around to see, you haven't done a bad thing because you haven't directly affected anyone's life. And the image of this is, in a city, there's lots of people around. So if you litter in the city, you're going to cause trouble for other people in some way. There's a very strong cultural norm in Japan that you don't want to cause other people trouble. You don't want to be a nuisance. It's why everyone's quiet on the trains and people don't use their phone. There's no law that says you have to be quiet on the trains, but everyone is because they don't want to be a nuisance to other people. However, once you get out to the beach, the shoreline where there's no one around, or you're out in the forest where there's no one around, and you're like, oh, well, if I throw my microwave oven here, then it might inconvenience a deer or something. So, no problem. Whoop. So it's this culture of don't be a nuisance to other people that is very strong in Japan, and reason why that Japanese cities are so clean. But that's why places that are not civilization can be absolute dumping grounds.
But that's the actual law in Japan. Or, for example, let's take a look at the fact that Japan has maintained this culture of cleanliness. How could they do this? Why is it that this unique culture, and Japan has a very unique culture? If you watch any TV show about Japan, it is very foreign to the United States.
Oh, maybe he'll mention the meiwaku, don't be a nuisance part of the culture. He's bringing up the deep culture of Japan. What is his point actually going to be?
I've never been there. Most Americans have never been there, but it's a very, very different. Its cultures are different all over the world. And I'm glad that Jimmy Kimmel enjoyed his time in Japan. I'll also point out that Jimmy Kimmel, if he really liked Japan, let's say he wanted to go to Japan and move to Japan, the chances that he would ever become a citizen of Japan are extraordinarily low. In 2015, the number of applications for Japanese citizenship that were approved, total in 2015, was 9,400. That is the total number of people who were approved for citizenship in Japan. The population of Japan is, by the way, 125 million. So Japan has more than 1/3 the population of the United States and allows 10,000 people a year to become citizens of Japan. Now, if we adopted that policy, Jimmy Kimmel would call it racist, right? You know how many people become citizens in the United States, are naturalized as citizens in the United States every year? That number is almost 900,000. So we allow in 900,000 people a year to become citizens of the United States. Japan allows in 9,000. Might that have something to do with the cleanliness of its streets?
Okay, so Ben Shapiro was very quick to look at the law and the regulation in terms of why people might not litter in Japan, getting it wrong. But fails to look at the reason why maybe Japan doesn't have so many people naturalized. Like myself, I could naturalize. I've lived in Japan for nearly 20 years. I'm married to a Japanese. I have permanent residency. I have a child. I have a whole life. My career is here. Everything's here. I'm not going to become a Japanese citizen, not because I can't, but because I would have to give up, formally recant being an American. I would have to say, I'd have to go to the US Embassy, formally give up my citizenship to the United States to become Japanese. Japan does not allow dual citizenship. And as a result, there's quite a number of people here who could become citizens who choose not to because they don't want to give up their original citizenship. Whereas in the US, you can go through the classes and take the test and say the pledge and all those sorts of things, and you don't have to give up your passport to the UK or to Ecuador or to South Africa or wherever it was you came from. So there's a reason, and it's not necessarily because the Japanese are keeping you from becoming naturalized. They just don't allow dual citizenship.
Here are the ethnic groups in Japan by population. Hey, you ready? South Korean, 0.3%. Vietnamese, 0.4%. Chinese, 0.6%. Japanese, 97.5%. So it is a completely ethnically homogenous land that allows 0 immigrants every year. Now, by the way, it's a package deal. It ain't all wonder and joy over in Japan. For example, Japan's economy has totally flamed out.
This is my favorite part.
So Japan's GDP per capita, as of about 2000, was equivalent to that of the United States. In 2001, the GDP per capita in Japan was about $34,000, and the GDP per capita in the United States was about $37,000. And if you go back to the mid-90s, when they were in the middle of their big bubble, Japan actually surpassed the United States pretty significantly in terms of GDP per capita. They were up at about $44,000 per capita in 1996, and the United States was at $28,690 per capita in 1995-1996. Today, just remember that number, 44,100 GDP per capita, 1995 for Japan. Today, the GDP per capita in Japan is $33,823. So it has actually declined by a quarter over the course of the last 25 years or so. The United States, by contrast, this terrible, horrible, very dirty, no good, very bad country, according to Jimmy Kimmel. We were at $28,000 per capita in 1995, and today we are at $76,000 per capita. We almost tripled it.
The first time I watched this, I just thought, wow, it's amazing how he pivoted from Japan doesn't allow immigrants in. America does allow immigrants in. Japan's economy was good when the population was growing. But since, he's using this 25-year time frame, what's happened in those 25 years? Japan's population is going down. It's no longer growing, and they don't let in immigrants. Maybe, just maybe, immigration helps grow the economy of a place. Now, I'm not saying that Japan must let in immigrants. I'm actually very ambivalent to the idea that Japan needs to do that. I made a video about this before, and I made it pretty clear that I don't think that that's necessarily the solution for Japan's economy. And if you want to know my thoughts or why I think that, you can watch that video. But I just think it's really ironic that he goes from Japan doesn't allow immigrants in, and the fact that Japan's economy has been shrinking and just stuck for the past 25 years as the population shrinks and is stuck. And then talks about how wonderful America's economy is and just tries to shuffle under the rug the fact that America allows in all those, 900,000 legal new citizen immigrants. 90,000, 900,000, I don't remember what it was, but it was a lot larger than Japan. So I don't know, correlation does not equal causation, but that might have something to do with it. America's population has continued to grow, and with it, the economy has continued to grow. Japan, not growing in either respect. So, at any rate, I'm sorry that if I've ruffled feathers on your political stripes, but I'm not actually trying to make any commentary about the U.S. at all in this. I mean, I don't care about U.S. immigration policy. I don't really care all that much about Japanese immigration policy. That's not, again, my lane. But I can go into depth on why Japan is the way it is in a way that neither Jimmy Kimmel nor Ben Shapiro can. So that's all I have to say. It's basically like you guys kind of left your lane to make your political points, to win points for your team. I'm not here to play for either team. I'm just here to point out that neither of them know what they're talking about when it comes to Japan. So I don't know if that's Paul destroys Jimmy Kimmel and Ben Shapiro, but I definitely hope I dropped a few education facts to help you understand what they're talking about in context, no matter who you agree with, because really, in this case, you probably shouldn't agree with either one of them. I'm a little bit nervous about releasing this video to the public because I don't want to be political in any way, shape, or form, and I tried to not be political. I hope that came across. I was just trying to spit facts that exist for themselves and not in the bubble of right versus left or conservative versus progressive. Like, that's not what I'm here to do. I just wanted to let the facts about Japan become more apparent. And if you found this at all useful, interesting, helpful, please drop the video a like, share it with someone you think would also enjoy it, and I want to thank you for watching this particular video. I don't do this kind of video very much, so if you want more like straight up Japan content, please subscribe, and I hope to see you on the next one. Peace.